Welcome to ArcisFX Live.
Hello, everyone. MD, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I'm okay. Don't usually do much on Sunday, but this is a refreshing change of pace. Wondering what your view of Ether and Sol is. Thanks. Yeah, we'll absolutely get to that. Let me just make a note of that. Ethereum, Sol. Right. Okay. How is everybody? It's been hi TC, good to see you. It's obviously been a little bit crazy. Now, if you haven't experienced the Black Swan event before, hi Lola, good to see you. Thanks for being here. If you haven't experienced a Black Swan event before, welcome to the club. Before institutional adoption with Bitcoin, this was happening all the time. When I was learning about crypto, starting around 2019, that sort of thing, this was all the time. And honestly, I was exhilarated on Friday. It was a breath of fresh air for me. It was very just honest. I was exhilarated. I was excited by it. And I think we need to talk about that today because as a trader, as crypto traders, we want to be looking at these sort of crashes as opportunities and trying to plan for those opportunities. Now, was I in a trade? Did I get stopped out? Yes. But was I in another trade which made me a load of money? Yes, I was. Now, that was a sort of hedging of sorts, but ultimately you have to, the second you start looking at, oh, Bitcoin will never go down to 97K. The second you start saying stuff like that, or Ethereum isn't going to go down to this level, the second you start saying stuff like that, it's going to go down to that level, right? Everyone in the market is trying to take your money. And ultimately, and of course, there's manipulation. Of course there is. But we're going to get into Bitcoin. But first, I just wanted to give you a little bit of positivity. This is Lola Never. So this is Zek. Zek was a top altcoin pick a few weeks back, and it is currently put in 559% gain. So I just wanted to start with something positive. So Zek is doing really well in the face of all of this turmoil, but a little bit of positivity to start with. But let me just flick a Bitcoin chart up while we're talking. This is the, let's just find the right one. So yeah, this is Bitcoin. This is 1 month. And the red line represents the primary trend, essentially. And this is previous cycle tops. And we are nowhere near these overbought conditions. And as you can see, this recent dip from Bitcoin isn't even registering really on this time frame. So I'm going to leave that up. And I just want to, I'm just going to switch off because I'm monitoring comments here. That's great to say. Plan for these events. Last week, you suggested a load of long trades. This was all created by. Let me just go back to that. Let's have a quick look at that comment. Let's have a look. So, that's great to say. Plan for these after the event. Last week, you suggested a load of long trades. This was all created by Binance. Right. Okay. Hi, JG. Thanks for joining us. Let's get into that just for a second before I read what I was going to read. So. What we want and what we present here at ArcisFX is we look for trading opportunities, we post shorts, we post longs, and some of those longs are not ready to enter play. As an example, one of the trades I was looking at, what was it called? C98 required Bitcoin to come down a little bit in order to fulfill it. Now, these are trades which are not, we're not suggesting that everything's going to go long or all of these setups are going to play out. Not all of them do, but you take these setups, these trading opportunities, which save you from having to scour the web, scour the charts to find all these opportunities out of thousands, tens of thousands of crypto. And then you assess the market. You look at what's going on and then you trade them accordingly. It's as simple as that. And of course, risk management is always something you need to be paying attention to because these things can happen. If Bitcoin takes a tumble when you're about to enter a trade, then of course it's going to go the wrong way. So you have to be mindful of these things. Yes, there is. Of course, there is manipulation across exchanges. There's manipulation among big players, of course. But part of the advice we've been giving here over the last few weeks is, Bitcoin looks like a house of cards. We have to be very cautious here. And when people are saying to me, like, should we get in an Ethereum now? My advice and our advice here is, well, if we look at the TA of Ethereum, it hasn't done a proper retest yet of around the 3650 level, and we say that because it's based on TA. So the setups we provide are all TA trading analysis with good setups, with good probabilities behind them, and then of course you've got to juggle the market, what Bitcoin is giving us, and all those elements in order to do that. But Bitcoin could have very easily bounced from where it was, but we've had a lot of issues and we've had some last minute announcements. So, we all need to take responsibility for the positions we take. And we're just trying to provide as many opportunities as possible. And essentially so we can have some good trading opportunities. But we're not 50% of the setups we post aren't necessarily going to work out, because all of the setups we post are not necessarily compatible with the current market conditions. So we'll give you a short setup, and if the short comes into play, then of course you've got something to trade. If we've got a long setup which is ready to go now, but Bitcoin doesn't bounce, then it won't play out. Or if we've got a long setup which requires Bitcoin to come down, then of course that setup will be for maybe a few days' time, and then there's a play there. And you want to, of course, you need to match up those setups with all of those different market conditions. So if I post 10 setups, only 3 or 4 of them are really going to be appropriate for the market conditions in any given week, and we need to trade them accordingly, which is why the issue is in the crypto space is a lot of people will follow YouTubers and whatnot, and they'll be, buy here, buy here, buy here, or sell here, sell here, sell here. We don't do that here. At ArcisFX, what we do is we provide you with opportunities and advice on how to trade them appropriately with good risk management, and that's what we do. But as I said, I was entering a trade. I was waiting for Bitcoin to come down with C98, and C98 gave me my entrance, and then I was assessing the market, and it just went the other way. And the irony is that in the group, ArcisFX's private group, I made, a lot of people were asking me to break down how I approach trading. So I decided Friday night would be the day I would discuss one of the setups which I was entering, regardless of which way it went. It's supposed to be an educational experience, so people could see my thought process. And the irony is that I was doing that at the exact time when we were getting the announcements out of the United States, and all of a sudden Bitcoin was starting to head downwards. And I was not live tweeting this, of course, but in the group I was essentially live grouping what I was doing in my trade. So it was like, I've entered my trade, this is the rationale, I'm seeing some bearish signals from the market with Bitcoin dominance. So if this happens, I'm going to look for a no loss exit. And then the third post I put was, I've been stopped out. There's a Black Swan event in progress. And that's just the name of the game. However, and we'll get to this in a minute, I had a VR position, which was designed for if the market topples. And I essentially had, I will talk about this in a second. So I got stopped out on one trade, but then as the market crashed, it came so deep down on Victoria VR, which was an AI token I was trading. It scooped up my buy order, quite a significant buy order, immediately bounced, which was essentially the plan. And then I got 25% profits in just seconds. I took that out of the market, and now I'm going to re-enter VR at the level which it entered again on Friday, but now with a quarter of my position grown. And so I've walked away from Friday with more money than I had before I entered Friday. And this is ultimately the game which we're all playing. And we're going to continue to post long setups this week. We're going to continue to post short setups this week. And of course, we need to assess what the market does, because there's probably a good opportunity soon with Bitcoin this low, but we need to get into why. Let's have a look at some comments before I get into this. Let's have a look. Very good point. No one can predict market moves except maybe Trump. I would advise listening to him. Yeah. Really good question. Yeah, really good points. Fair. Just keeping you honest. Yes, I appreciate that. Let me just get that up on screen. There we go. Fair, just keeping you honest. Just important to see this for what it is. We all got burnt. C98 pumping. Let's have a look at C98. I'm trying to get to a explanation of something, so we'll get that in. But please, the comments are fantastic. Happy to, let's find C98. Yeah, not pumping. We're not pumping at C98. But yeah, this was the trade I was in. We were looking for, we've been waiting for days for a retrace back down to this support level. You can see based on TA, wonderful confluence with the point of control, the 200 MA. Really great. But the problem is this happened exactly as we were entering. The whole thing just got invalidated straight away. It didn't give me any organic exit of any kind. And that was it. But with VR, I had a, that's not that one. Where's VR? So with VR, VR was all the way up here, 100% move from here, and I had a buy order here, just on the off chance, because of course, as I said, Bitcoin was a house of cards. And look, we had the crash. It filled my order almost perfectly, bounced up to around here. I took profits, expanded my position, and now I've now got the same buy order again in exactly the same place, looking to scoop it up again, having grown the position. But I just want to read something very quickly. I think it probably summarizes what's happened. I just need to remove you guys from the comments for a second. Okay, so this was just something which I think was quite appropriate. So I'm just going to read this off. What we saw was a full system de-risking that used crypto as a pressure release valve. Okay, now bearing in mind that crypto is a risk asset, with the exception of Bitcoin, of course. But Bitcoin is king, and you have to get to the rest of the market, you have to fail Bitcoin a bit. So the day started off with the global growth scare with trade war headlines, right? And the day started off is depending on your time zone. For me, it was much later in the day. Oil falling off a cliff, long bond yields sliding, and that flipped every risk model from carry to cut. So essentially, what that point is saying is that those very quick succession of essentially news events made people just essentially flip to turn on risk assets, right? Which was, of course, made worse by the fact that Bitcoin had a very inorganic run up over the last couple of weeks. So in equities and bonds, that shows up as driven deleveraging. So in crypto, it shows up as louder and faster because the market, of course, is 24/7 cross-margin and built in perpetuals. So once that price gap lowered, high open interest means thinner liquidity, funding turns, collateral values shrink, and forced selling engine takes over where longs are liquidated, dealers hedge into weakness, on-chain lending vaults breach thresholds, and the cascade propagates from Bitcoin to Ethereum to the long tail. The dollar and real yields easing would normally be a tailwind, but in a shock like this, liquidity trumps macro. Participants first kill leverage, then ask questions later. So two details matter beneath this headline. First, the move was led by derivatives and not spots. Okay, and there's obviously a lot of manipulation there. That's classic structure, not thesis, which is why drawdowns in majors were smaller than wipeouts across alts with leveraged ecosystems. We looked at ZEC at the start. Second, the plumbing amplifier. Ether is widely used as collateral across perpetuals and DeFi. When Ether slides, the system auto sells more Ethereum and everything tied to it. That's how you get record liquidations out without even a single crypto native catalyst. So again, I haven't checked the data points, but it seems like this was the biggest liquidation event in crypto history. I need to check that. The last one was very recent. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that this is an element of this is the fact that there's an argument that crypto going mainstream has reduced the amount of black swan events for sure. Okay, that's fine. And the issue is, of course, but now we've got institutional money in, we could argue that maybe black swan events are potentially going to be returning. And there's a whole idea of that. What is Bitcoin going to look like? Is the 4-year cycle done? And what is that going to mean for Bitcoin? Maybe it means more volatility now. Maybe that's what it means. And we keep ascending higher, but ultimately we're going to have maybe the return of more of these black swan events. And the reality is that we are completely in chaos in the world economy as a result of the tariff situation and all these sorts of issues. So it's a very complicated picture, but there's there's always a conspiracy somewhere. There's always somebody shorting and manipulating the market. But ultimately, it was a combination of a lot of factors which have all contributed to this. The fact that we haven't had data points as well because of the government shutdown has also created uncertainty. But let's just look at Bitcoin and let's see where we are. So this is just the big picture. Let me just put the comments back so I can see everybody. Just wanted to just read that off to you. Here we go, comments. Right, so this is the long-term outlook for Bitcoin, and typically these are bull market tops. The law of diminishing returns suggests that Bitcoin isn't going to go all the way up to 1.5 million or whatever this cycle, but the idea is we could be reaching this purple line at around 180 or this red line at around 300K. We're nowhere near that. The stock is nowhere near overbought, so everything's fine. let's just make that clear. Here is Bitcoin 1 week log scale. Everything, this crash isn't even registering on this. Okay, we are here. This is potentially the bull run target up here at around 400k, maybe. Again, just based on this TA on this one chart. So just everything's fine. The parabola arguably might still be intact because, of course, this is a moving thing. So it'd be interesting to see if we get a bounce from there. I'm not going to move it just yet, but let's just zoom in to Bitcoin, and here's just a clear picture. So we had this nice bounce and run up, and it was all of these green candles all in a row, and then all of these red candles all in a row, which is the same thing. What goes up quick will come down quick. And it's as simple as that. We've been saying that all the last couple of weeks. Bitcoin is a house of cards. So this is the 6-hour chart. And ultimately, if that's the market cycle bell curve right there in front of you. Let me just have a sip of coffee. So this is it. We've essentially had a reset, right? But can we just to remind people that this is where we were at the end of September, 2 weeks ago, just here at around 110. And we're above that level right now, okay? And we're at support, diagonal support, and we could see a bounce from here. So, this is the perspective, right? The fear and the fervor are just as unhelpful to you as a trader as the bullish fervor, which has been unhelpful to everyone as a trader on the flip side, because everybody essentially was, the second we get moves like this from Bitcoin, everybody is like, all the media is like, are we going to the moon? Don't miss out. I get loads of students. I'm not joking. I get so many students getting in touch, fresh students, new students looking to get into crypto, because essentially Bitcoin is up here. And all of the bullish fervor in the market, all of that sort of stuff is making people want to get in. But the reality is that, this is where you want to get in. When the market is down, you want to be having that conversation. And we have to put the bullish fervor to one side, and we have to be grumpy. We have to be just very chill about it. And if we see TA, which isn't particularly healthy, then we need to address it. So this is Bitcoin 12-hour charts, and we're of course at the bottom of this channel. Now, these were the three options we were looking at: bullish, moderately bullish, and sort of bearish scenarios. And these sort of charts ultimately, let me just clear that. These sort of charts are ultimately here we're talking about the point which which JG I think was mentioning at the start about all the long setups. Look, we post charts like this all the time to say, look, this is the most bullish scenario for Bitcoin if we bounce at 120. This is more moderate expectation from Bitcoin if we bounce at 118k. And if we hadn't had that news event on Friday, that may have happened. And then this is the worst case scenario, potentially where we come all the way back down to retest this diagonal. And so we've got all of these different scenarios, and you have to assess the market based on these. And seeing as Bitcoin's had a really strong run up, it hasn't retested this level or this level. 0.2 or 3 makes sense in terms of what you'd expect from trading analysis. And if we look at Bitcoin's run up, I'm trying to find the right chart. Here we go. Look at this. Right. So this is the 4-hour chart. Excuse me. So we had the initial breakout of this trading range back at the end of September, which gave us bullish confirmation that we were moving up. We broke through the 4-hour 200 MA. We retested that, but that was the last time we had any natural organic price action. And then we just barrel through what is essentially 115k. We don't retest it, right? We don't check that it's support, meaning that you're essentially running up a ladder. Right? You're not checking your footing. You're running up a ladder. Then we break through 118. We give it a little tap. Don't even come all the way back down. No solid foundation. And we keep doing that all the way up. We break all previous all-time highs. We put in all-time highs. Bullish fervor goes crazy. And what have we got? We have a house of cards. So then sellers start taking over, which is perfectly normal. We look to 118k as the most logical bounce point, sort of 40% retracement on this move. And then on Friday, we get the news, the sellers take over, and we get the reset. That is essentially what happened. Yes, people will take advantage of it. People will see this house of cards and recognize that everybody's running towards it like moth to a flame, and they're going to try and manipulate you. They're going to try and take your money. Of course they are. That's the market, right? But they wouldn't have been able to push the market all the way this down without some kind of news event or these things. And of course, they're going to pounce on it. And of course, there's all kinds of manipulation across the board. But you can't look at this TA and think, oh, I'm going to enter Bitcoin up here, because it's just not safe. And the whole point of like the trades we're looking at with C98, we've seen the breakout, we're waiting calmly for the retest, and this is a good place to come in on for a bounce. But then we get something happen and we come down, and that's why we have a stop loss, right? That's the play essentially. But these are all the crazy things which have kind of been happening. So splash of cold water, black swan events. If you've been through crypto, they've been around crypto the last 5 to 6 years, perfectly normal. It's just, this is just the way it goes. And there is a way to try and make money, which we'll talk about. But let's have a quick look at some of these comments right now. I'm doing this by the seat of my pants. We are surviving somehow after the crash. Yes, we are surviving somehow after the crash. Let's have a look. That's great to say. Here we go. It should be illegal. Let's have a look at this. It should be illegal what BlackRock and those places are doing. Can we have Paul to guide us through it? Well, this is the whole thing, isn't it? This is the question and the concern about institutional adoption, right? You know, Bitcoin, then the crypto market was very isolated experience only just 3 or 4 years ago when I was learning to trade. Now with institutional adoption, of course, we're going to have even more manipulation on a bigger scale, typical to what you see on Wall Street. So yeah, there is, you know, there are of course concerns, but they have their own. I can't really knock them for it, because all these ETF funds and all this kind of stuff, they have their own client base and their own profit margins to consider. They don't care about retail. And if I was running it, I probably wouldn't care about retail either. So there's going to be manipulation. They've got to deal with their clients. And that's just the way it goes, right? We are trying as traders to be able to identify that, to recognize that, and be able to benefit from some of the manipulation by seeing it coming, understand how the market works, and see where people are going to take advantage of traders. And when you see Bitcoin as it is, very vulnerable, people will try and take advantage of that. When you're feeling further, when you're like, Bitcoin, yeah, they're trying to get in. Is it okay to buy Ethereum now? Is it okay to buy Sol now? You know, questions I all get in the group. And I'm like, whoa, this is the better level. This is a better place to buy. Just wait, right? And this is ultimately what avoids you getting manipulated. Because if you are that sort of person thinking, I need to get in at Bitcoin at 124K, then of course you're going to get burned. Of course the sellers are going to manipulate the price action, because because they recognize it needs to come down. And this is part of the whole equation. So it is very complicated. It can be a little bit frustrating. And I got to be honest with you, this is the first Black Swan event I have managed to start successfully implementing plans for like V-shaped bounces and oversold bounces to benefit, which is what my mentor many years ago was all about. That's how he made his money. So, and I'm quite proud of the fact that, you know, these events now are something which we can turn into profit as opposed to bearish further. And this is something, of course, in the ArcisFX private group, we will be working towards to help traders of any experience level try to see these events as opportunities. And even if, of course, we're not saying don't enter a trade. I was entering a trade, I got stopped out, right? And a few people got liquidated. But ultimately, we always want to have a plan B, and we want to have an option. What if it does this? And, you know, the hedging approach here, which James takes in his, is something which we can take a little bit and use in the crypto space. And that will be having buy orders set at really low levels to scoop up these crashes and make money off them to offset any losses we have. And this is essentially how you trade crypto. You can't trade it like traditional stocks. You can't trade it like normal commodities. You have to look at it as the volatility is either your enemy or your friend. And if you have to choose not to fight the volatility, but to use it to your advantage. And if you can figure out a way to do that, and it's going against the human condition, or again, it's that buying red thing, right? And I remember when Bitcoin crashed in March 2022, when it was like $3,500, I had plenty of money. I was staring at it on the chart, but I was inexperienced. And my fear that Bitcoin would go to naught, there's the media again in my head, right? Made me not buy it. So I bought Bitcoin at 6K, but I didn't buy a couple of them at 3.5K, which would have really benefited me. And you've just got to realize that what comes up comes down, and what comes down comes up, and be ready for these situations. And there'll always be a crash, and having money on the sidelines to benefit is probably the final level of being to achieve to be a successful crypto trader. But let me have a look at these comments. There's so many. I'm so grateful to have everyone here. It's really exciting to have everyone in the comments, keeping me company on a Sunday. Let's have a look. MD, China has fully assessed the potential impact of these measures on the supply chain, is confident the impact will be very limited. I'm sure China is very confident, but let's not get too political. I was about to trade on Friday. For some reason, I didn't. Well, I'm glad you weren't paying attention to me, Lola. So I'm glad you weren't paying attention. JG, it's not BlackRock Emily. This is Crypto Institutions Bitfinex. I would argue that these things, there's the combination of everything. It is a combination of everything. It is a very curious space at the moment. I mean, look, the dollar. Let me load up my dollar chart, right? Just to highlight. I'm just going to leave your comment up there for a second. Where is it? I think I've did some prep today. Where is the dollar chart? Where is it? Let's see if I can find it. We're playing this game again. How long will it take me? Here it is. I've done it. Here we go. So look, when there's so many obvious signs of why this happened, right? So here we go. This is the Bitcoin on the top, and this is the dollar on the bottom. And look, so just as Bitcoin is reaching its peak, the dollar on the bottom starts heading upwards. So again, adding additional confluence to the selling pressure and the concerns in the market. So it is not just one thing, it's multiple things. It's Bitcoin's price action, the way it ascended, it's the way people are reacting to it, the way the media is reacting to it. And of course, just the basics where people see something happening, they have to offset their risk and they'll just dump risk assets. It's as simple as that. So all these great comments. Thank you. Crashes, don't hate it, don't date it, just trade it. Yes, exactly. Brilliant. That's exactly the mentality. Don't hate it, don't date it, just trade it. Exactly. Let's have a look. I'm just going to throw these up. I must do some research on crypto institutions. I saw BlackRock bought 1 million Bitcoin and then dumped it a few days later last week. Yeah, and this all contributes for sure. It all contributes, but they will be looking at essentially the fervor around the market, and they'll be looking to manipulate it, right? Just like I put my VR position on so low down. Why did I put it so low down? With the current TA with Bitcoin and just the general fervor of the market, and VR had made 100% move up. What's making me think that it could come 100% down? Because, well, it can, and that's the thing. It can. It's crypto. It can do that. It can go up 100% in a week, and it can come down 100% in a week. And if you have that in your head, if you have that mentality, then you can say, you know what, I'm going to keep my VR buy order at this level, even though it doesn't seem like it's going to get reached today. And then if the market continues higher, you can maybe reevaluate. But it was great, and it made me have a really good Friday, right, when other people weren't. And this is the general idea. It wasn't a risky entrance, right? The worst case scenario for me with that entrance, that hedging entrance was, well, it won't get filled, right? But if it does get filled, you make a lot of money very quickly. Which makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your knowledge. Well, look, we're all in this together, and this shock is different to the last one, and the one before it will be the different, because the market's changing. So we all have to learn together and try and make sense of all of this. I must do some more research on crypto institutions. Yeah, we've had that one. That's great. Sorry, I put the wrong one up. Yeah, I'll get it twice. How do I get that off? Okay, great. So this is where we are. And the reality is, when I post and I talk about it's not a conspiracy, it's not any of these things, because the signals were there, right? If you go back and look at some of the Bitcoin update videos and everything we've been looking at, and not just me, with other people around on YouTube as well, they've been saying, right, you need to be careful because this is not organic price action. So all of this has contributed. It's not somebody's just decided to pull the plug and we've crashed. They've looked at the market. We've had some bad news, and it's all just come back to this point where we have to sell because of the uncertainty, and because of Bitcoin was out on a ledge. Then this is what happens, which is why we've, even when I was talking about my C98 trade just a few days before Friday, and someone was asking me about it, I said I still have a limit order for that entrance, which maintain was a good entrance, but I said Bitcoin needs to find its feet first. Caution, right? And that's just the reality. And maybe. I may have thought not to enter that trade, but the reality is we didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't know we were going to get a tweet, and that's just the way it goes. Stop loss got eaten. I know a few people in the group got liquidated. Just live, as long as you learn from what happened and you try and look for the next event as an opportunity, as opposed to, But let's have a look at some setups. Thank you for the comments. Really great stuff. Keep them coming. Let's just go through some setups and just see what the state of the market is at the moment. Okay, so Bohm was a top altcoin pick, which has reset, essentially come down. It's now sitting at previous support. So if this is an example of something you want to trade, then of course you want to, don't be a canary in the coal mine, just want to see something first. So obviously we're paying attention to Bitcoin. What Bitcoin does next is going to determine. But now we've got, so firstly, the CME and BTC equities futures open will probably help a little bit or give us an indication. I think that's 11 p.m. my time, 6 p.m. ET. Those markets will open later today and then should give us some more clarity. So that you should be taking any action until we see what happens with those market opens, because obviously until those markets open, Bitcoin and the market is just going to bleed because we've got no clarity. But if you are thinking as an example of trading something like this, which is oversold now and has lost the bullish narrative, what do you want to see, right? You need to see it come back up to this level. You need to see it come back down, right? Maybe form a bit of a structure. It's probably not going to pump straight away, so you've got a bit of time. Check it's got stability. Look for a bullish signal of some kind. I mean, ideally, like something like this, right? And then you can come back in at support, right? But the key is whatever these setups are, a lot of them invalidated now, you can benefit from these low prices, but you need to wait for bullish confirmation and don't just buy here and now because we're just right below resistance, and that's bad trading practice. So let's have a look at something else. Theta, not doing very well. So again, Theta needs to recover. So Theta's got a bit of work to do. So what do we need to see from Theta? And this is the sort of mentality which you want to have when looking at these setups, right? Don't just think, ooh, low price buy. No, we are below, we're in negative price discovery now, and we're below support. So Theta, what we look for, we want to see a move up to here, and then maybe you can look to come in again for some raging activity, right? But look for some kind of bullish signal first before you enter any of these things. SEI, again, same sort of deal. Let's just clear this up. Look at a bit of a market carnage, a bit of triage. So yeah, right, what do we need to see from SEI? I mean, looking at this right now, we need to wait quite a bit for this to recover. It's not looking pretty good for this, but think about what you need to see, what the buyers need to see to enter this trade. So maybe we come back here, we form a double bottom, and then we break the neckline, and then that's your entrance, right? Bullish confirmation, wait for the W pattern, right? So this is what you're going to be doing this week. You're going to be looking at setups. You're going to be, even some of the ones which we had in like altcoin picks this week, some will still be valid, or some will be an opportunity to essentially enter, but we need that confirmation, right? This is very important, right? Now you decide based on your risk tolerance what that bullish confirmation is. This would be the safest. Wait for a whole reversal pattern to form above support and then buy the breakout of the neckline. But somebody's got to form the pattern, right? So you might just wait for that and your first touch, and then you might want to come in here. So either way though, don't just jump in here, wait and align yourself with what you think buyers need to see to enter. Tree's gone off the map, so we can close that down. That is pretty. So that's gone. That's not going anywhere. You see an altcoin like this, which you had in your back pocket, that's done. Now, you could say, well, this is a fantastic buying opportunity for Tree. You could say that, but who's coming in here? I mean, who's coming in here? There's no structure. We've got nothing to trade off, right? This could just come down all the way here, just as much as it could all the way up here. So Tree, closing that down, that's done. Know when to just ditch something, right? This has an opportunity. Tree does not. Yeah, definitely need to wait, Lola. Theta, yeah, we just talked about that another chart. Okay, so just close that down. Okay, so look, an opportunity. SUI, obviously a pretty good crypto. We have major support just below us, right? So let's just draw some lines in the sand. Let's try and find some opportunities. Here we go. So we're currently at support, but this wick, of course, came almost down to mainstream support. And you have to presume that's in play now, right? You have to presume that whatever happens over the next few days, even if Bitcoin recovers, there's going to be a lot of people very hesitant about entering the market, especially with the government shutdown, especially because we haven't had key data points as a result of the Fed being closed. So, but major support now. So SUI, okay, we've had the crash. The whole bullish narrative of coming in here and having a range play is gone. But now we have major support, which is a great opportunity. And then you can decide where you come in this area. So SUI, good opportunity. You just need to wait and see what happens. But don't, I mean, this is no man's land right now, okay? This is the bullish narrative. This is the bullish narrative. This is confusion. So wait for this area. But SUI looking pretty good. My watch list. Right, now, okay, speaking of one of the comments, let me just switch to the comments for a minute. What's this? Paul, all last week, this is in the private group. So if you're not in the private group, people, we would love to have you. It's a wonderful community, which great people like Tamer asking questions, helping other people with setups, and just asking all the right stuff. So, Paul, all last week I asked you ask for Ethereum where to take position for long. You said wait till 3650. Right. Okay. Yeah. Now I don't want to. Thank you. You said that in the group as well, now, and that was very nice of you to say. But I don't have a crystal ball. I did not know that this crash was coming. It happened like that, right? And just like the rest of you, I was trying to figure out in the frame. But why did I say wait for 36550? Well, let's have a quick look. Let's just load up Ethereum and let's have a quick look, because I haven't got a crystal ball. I didn't see this coming. I'm not some massive genius, right, in this respect, but it's just basic TA. Look, so this is the triangle pattern on the 3-day for Ethereum. We had a strong breakout, right? We hadn't yet retested it. We had not yet checked that this had flipped from resistance to support. Basic TA. We've had a breakout. We need to retest it to bring in new buyers to the market. That is basic TA. Now, Ethereum could ascend higher from here, but this will always be a foundation which needs to check. And until Ethereum broke above this, you have to presume that this area, which it lines up with 3650, is still in play. That was essentially what I was saying, and this, of course, crash has caused Ethereum to come back down to that level and slightly below, and then bounce from it. And it will probably see Ethereum now hang around for a little bit, which is why it's so important not to ignore the basic trend dynamics, right? Breakout and retests, and what buyers and sellers need to see, even on higher time frames, because ultimately, fine, there's an argument for coming in with Ethereum here at around 4,000 at the bottom of this range. There's an argument for that, but there is no argument for coming in and buying Ethereum up here at around 4,800. There is no argument. And if you're going to buy it here, then why not wait for here, or at least enter some position? So that's essentially all I was saying. And the reason why I'm a stickler for TA, because TA is the antidote for FOMO. It's the antidote for FOMO. So I did not predict this crash. I did not know for certain that Ethereum was going to revisit 3650. It was highly likely at some point. I didn't know it was going to be this weekend. But what I'm trying to convey in the group and to all of my fellow traders is to be patient, not to get caught up in your emotions, and to look at the charts with cool, collected vision, right? And if you're thinking of buying Ethereum, this is always going to be the place to be, especially when the price action is still within this range. Still just above this pattern, and that's essentially the mentality behind it. So let's have a look. I remember the warnings of the BTC in crypto's latest Bitcoin update. Yeah, I mean, yes, and there would be some commentators be like, "Look, I told you so." It's not about that. I didn't predict this was going to happen, but all I did know is there is a likelihood of a retrace from Bitcoin. And because it came up really fast, there's a likelihood that it could come down really quickly. And of course, that's happened on speed because of the thing. But anyone with a chart can see, if you just look without kind of, bullish fervor, the reality of the price action over the last few weeks. And there's not all uptrends are created equal. And that's the most important thing to recognize. The only thing that worries me on BTC and CME gap at 91K, so risk management. Yeah, absolutely. Risk management is paramount. And it was hilarious to me that I decided to be talking about a trade in the group and my reasoning, and this all happened. But I do hope that those of you who will look in the group and see what I was actually just writing all the time while this was happening, that hopefully it's quite insightful. But I think one thing which I hope anyone will take from my breakdown of my trade on Friday night when this was happening was I was calm, I was cool. I was seeing these things happening in real time. I was writing about a rationale and a thought process. And even though, my stop loss got hit, right? There was no panicking. It was my plan. This was stage 1. This was stage 2. Oh no, my stop's hit. That's it. Game over, right? But that was it. And this is the most important thing. You can't predict these events, but you can be grumpy and look at the market with skepticism, which is very important because, again, that's the antidote to manipulation. Bear in mind, guys, the crash was not a normal situation. Nobody would know that's coming. Yeah, and the thing is, I am. Let me put that back up for a second. People let that read it. I suffer, from the emotion of the market too, right? I really do. But you have to struggle with it. You have to fight it, and Sure, if all of the events of Friday happened in slow motion over the course of 12, 24 hours, then sure, James, me, whatever, some of the people in the group, some of you guys, Tamer, whatever, we would have been able to put all the pieces together and see what was happening. But then, of course, that's not what causes crashes. Crashes are caused by sudden shock movements, and people de-risk very quickly and then ask questions later. The only thing is we've just got to make sure that we're ready for it, and then we're not in positions which are not appropriate. So no one can say, like with the C98 trade, which we were in, that we're coming in at the wrong position. We're coming in at the perfect position, right? Whether it bounces is up to the market, of course, and it's difficult to tell, but how these things are going to play out sometimes. But this is just the way you need to approach it. The other thing also, look, there's a bit of a, let me just take that comment off. Let me put another chart up while we're having a chat. We should do this more often on Sunday, actually. It's better than watching crappy movies. So this is Bitcoin 2-hour chart. So you can see Bitcoin's got a lot of work to do, and we had a bearish retest of 112K, which was previous all-time highs. So what does Bitcoin need to do over the next few days and weeks? Well, we are essentially back at the support line of this previous breakout range, which started this rally. So a full reset. This is the line to watch. We don't want Bitcoin to go below 110K. Ideally, that would mean, of course, there's more downside. But Bitcoin now has to get above the daily 50 MA, the 4-hour 200 MA, 115K, 118K. It's got a lot of work to do. And with the government shut down at the moment and a lot of issues happening, I mean, here's the problem. I'm trying desperately not to get political. Let me have a sip of coffee so I can just calm myself. Somebody please order me a microwave for my desk. It's cold coffee again. It's disgusting. So we're missing data points out of the United States. Okay, that's the first thing. The current administration in the United States, regardless of whatever you think of this, they are issuing they are firing thousands of people for the CDC in all kinds of different areas. Now, when the government reopens, if it reopens, what's that going to mean for the markets? What is that going to mean, right? All of these things with all of these jobs just disappeared. All of this sort of, I mean, there's so many different factors, right? Which is very difficult to understand, because it's not just about jobs missing, it's about crucial functions of government potentially missing as well. So we are absolutely back in chaos theory again. And this China stuff, I mean, it's like somebody, the way I look at it, right, this is just my opinion. And I am definitely of the statesman approach to the world, in terms of we should be working with allies, we should be working with people to ensure stability. And even though you might not agree with the direction of that, ultimately, when there is stability, when things are negotiated and things happen slowly, or Congress is consulted on tariffs, etc., the market and businesses have time to react. What I see with all the tariff situation, which was happening months ago and currently happening now on Friday, which hasn't helped things and kind of initiated this, I see it as like someone breaks into your house, and the way you deal with them is by setting fire to your house to get them out. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think this is the problem. And I think the altcoin season, whatever that may look like, is constantly being inhibited by the economic turmoil coming out of not just the United States, but around the world as a result. And you can look at this as the great reshifting of international order following what the market structure has been in terms of the relationship with the United States and Europe over the last 60 or 70 years, right? And maybe there does need to be a change, right? But these changes need to happen so businesses can plan, investors can plan, and the markets are not currently, are not being at the receiving end of Friday night announcements out of whatever, right? So that's the way I look at it. And so it's very difficult to be like, Bitcoin dominance is broken down, it's altcoin season, when I know, and if we just look at Bitcoin dominance, because it's a bit of a hairy picture, when we're like, yay, Bitcoin dominance is finally breaking down. This is Bitcoin dominance 4-hour chart. We finally got all this good altcoin action. But look, reset, right? Now, where's the bigger chart? Where's the other? Let me find it. Count the seconds, how long it takes me to find Bitcoin dominance, a larger time frame. Count how long. Is everyone counting? It's just, I can't find it. It may not be here. That's frustrating. Let's just see if I can find it. I may have closed it down to stop TradingView from yelling at me. There's one. Here we go. There, I found it. How long was that? 22 seconds. So this is Bitcoin Dominance Daily. This was the November election, fake out, biggest liquidation event up until recently, up until Friday in crypto history, right? Everyone got caught out. Altcoin season is off. And then we have months of just poor trading. We finally get the breakdown we need in July from Bitcoin dominance, which is essentially money proportionally flowing into the altcoin market at a faster rate than Bitcoin, which shows growth. And then, of course, we had this brief pause, essentially a bear flag of sorts, which is perfectly natural, a little bit of reset, a little bit of hesitation as a result of, this is a result of the way Bitcoin ascended. Because when Bitcoin came up so fast, it's very difficult for people, didn't give anyone any opportunities to enter their trades because it wasn't rechecking levels on the way up. And therefore, Bitcoin dominance reacted because it's highlighting, it's underscoring the fact that people are staying on the sidelines because every dollar Bitcoin went up like that, the risk increases. So no one entered their positions. And that's not intraday stuff. That's just more long-term investments. And then, of course, this has happened. We've had an essential reset all the way back down up to this 62%. And now we've got to find our feet again. So this is just another delay in, altcoin season. But if we do look at previous altcoin seasons, look, we had we had kind of this breakdown here. We then had a lot of these movements, these resets before it continued on its way. So you could see this maybe as a bit of a pause, an opportunity to come in at lower prices, but crazy time. There's also a few other elements to take into consideration in terms of the whole .com bubble correlation thing, right? So there is a bit of a correlation between Bitcoin and Nvidia at the moment, and this is all to do with the AI boom and all this kind of stuff. Now, we haven't got time to get into the AI stuff today, but there is an argument that the tech sector may be forming a bit of a bubble with the whole AI thing. Now, I'm not sure that's exactly the case because I don't think people perceive and understand exactly what this AI race is all about, which is less about Apple Intelligence or Google Gemini or deep faking or rather creating content which is indistinguishable from real news event, right? That's just the worst. That's just the bile of it, right? The slop, the AI slop and all that kind of stuff. It's not about that. It's about government control. It's about institutional control and company control, right, over us. Now, you want to look at Facebook and what the algorithm does and has done to societies and cultures around the world, arguably turning them a little bit more away from democracy to authoritarianism. That's one thing. AI is that on speed, right? In terms of, it's all about manipulation, it's about control, right? It's about data mining in a way which we haven't seen since all this Cambridge Analytica stuff out of Facebook. So that's the whole space. So I'm not sure it's the tech bubble which people think it is, because corporations are going to double down on AI because it has nefarious intent. But nonetheless, there is a correlation with NVIDIA. There is a correlation between NVIDIA and Bitcoin. And it might be interesting to see, of course, dig deeper into this over the next few weeks in terms of, how Bitcoin is linked to the tech sector at this point, given the fact that, the blockchain is the future. There's a lot of tokens and issues which have use cases in the rendering and the GPU processing space, which is integral to AI technology. So we can maybe get into that in another live stream, but there's a lot of factors at play and all of them are concerning, right? All of them are concerning. But that doesn't change the fact that silver, a store of value asset, has been putting in massive gains following the government shutdown. Bitcoin has been seen as a store of value. And if you look at these charts, right, nothing. What happened on Friday is nothing. It just means we've got to pick up the pieces. Let's have a look at XRP, right? So XRP, big crash, right? Here we go. But now we're just here, right? Where were we? This is where we were in July, right? So buying opportunity. We just need some bullish confirmation. So your thing this week is to go through all the setups, and we'll post some fresh stuff later in the week. So if you're in the private group, you'll get that first. If you're a YouTube subscriber, you're going to get those setups on Thursday, and we'll talk more about Bitcoin on Tuesday once the market settled and we've had the markets open again. But the setups we've got, you can still play. You can trade them any way you see fit. And we have XRP here. Ask yourself, what do I need to see from XRP to enter? Well, I need to see it maybe take the 200, right? And get back in the golden zone, and then maybe a couple more bullish steps. And then maybe I'll look to come in around this area, right? So spend the next few days planning your setups. and thinking about what you're going to do. Because I mean, look, Cello, this was a top altcoin pick this week, right? It was doing really well, but it couldn't hold the retest, much like C98. But we're back in the pattern. This is still in play, right? This could still break out, and we could just have the second play, the second touch, and then here we go. So this is still in play, but it's just got to do a bit of recovery. But there's something I wanted to just show, which I thought was quite interesting, and how just to make you feel better. So everybody got caught out. People were watching TV. They're out having a good time on Friday. Now, this is BAT. Now, I don't think that's the one I actually wanted to look at, but the interesting thing is that I can't see, that's not the one I wanted to look at, actually. I can't quite find it. There was another asset which had massive moves, swing moves, and that's because ultimately see, these are the altcoin setups this week. They've all kind of reset. Let's see if I can find it. There was an altcoin setup which clearly on the crash ran into a significant buy order, which pumped the price. And it was like whipsaw action. It was crazy, and it shows how people had buy orders still on the exchange, couldn't get them off in time, and it forced some of the assets which are crashing to recover very quickly. Ultimately, what was I just looking at? Yeah, so Sol. Yeah, I got sidetracked from Sol because someone wanted to ask about Sol. MD, I think it was. Sorry, I took so long to get to that. So Sol had conversations about this in group, right? People were saying, is 220 a good place to come in? 210 a good place to come in? And my answer was this: 180 is the best place to come in. Not because I foresaw a crash, but because based on TA, look, we've had this ascending channel. There is a 70-80% chance of a break to the downside. We have that. What do sellers need to do? They need to check that this has turned from support to resistance. And then where do you go from there? You come back down to wherever support is, and that is this area. And here we are. So Sol, great place to buy right now. We need to see recovery from Bitcoin. We need to maybe see a nice bounce from here. You want to see something like, okay, boom, maybe come up past this, and then maybe you've got a nice entrance with Sol. So Sol is an opportunity now, and this crash has facilitated a better price point for Sol. But could it continue down from here? It could do, right? But nonetheless, this is a good play now. This is where you wanted to be. It was not where you wanted to be previously. And this is the way you need to conduct yourself, right? Because you want to invest in Sol, great, wait for the right price point. And if you want to invest this week and Sol isn't where you want it to be, it is sort of where you want it to be, then there'll be another crypto which is where you want it to be, right? And that's the most important thing. You know, as someone said earlier, don't date these things, right? You know, set an alert on TradingView, wait for Sol to come where it is. And then if you're waiting for this crash and you've got a buy order here, then congratulations, you've got a great entry with Sol now, right? This is the way you need to think. If you're thinking, I need to come in with Sol at 230, 220 because I'm worried about missing out, what is that? It's FOMO, and you've just been caught out because of it. Let's look at these. Let's have a quick look. Bear in mind, guys, the crash was not a normal situation. Yeah, we've had that one. Sorry. There is a school of thought that this flush leads to a bigger bull run, so it's a buy. Yeah, I mean, look, you got to look at this. You've got to look at all of this with a clean perspective, right? It was a house of cards. Bitcoin had to come down. Didn't need to come down that fast, right? But it hadn't had a good ascent. And the ascent, why was Bitcoin heading up, right? Why was Bitcoin heading up? Because of the government shutdown. Because people were flooding into it as a store of value, and it created that fervor. And then everyone had blindfolds on because we didn't have data points for the economy because of the shutdown, and it was just chaos. And therefore, you know, all it takes is just a little bit of a push, and then that's what's happened, right? So, Bitcoin 12-hour chart. What do we want to see? Well, looking at this chart, this is what we want to see, right? Something like that, right? So ask yourself, what do I need to see to enter Bitcoin? Right? What do I want to see? Right? And maybe you want to come in on the second move, right? Maybe the market is a bit hesitant, but could we come down further from here? Yeah. Right. 106. Obviously, you know, we are maintaining this pattern, but if we lose that, it's going to be another leg down. But I don't want to jump in too much on the bearish narrative right now, because again, that's fear, right? And we don't want to be experiencing fear. We want to look at what we have and then trade it that way. So what are we asking? This is where Bitcoin is. What do I want to see to start taking positions again? Right? Ask yourself that question, answer that question, and then you're going to be okay. But if you're just running around panicking and not thinking clearly, or being fearful, here it is, ban. This is what I wanted to show you, ban. So this was clearly, look at this. This was Friday night, right? So this was a setup, which we were looking at a breakout entry, right? And what clearly happened was we had this crash, right? This shows how people didn't see it coming. We had this crash. people didn't have time to remove their lower level buy orders, right? And then they get hit. It forces the market up into profit, but then obviously then people have sell orders and then we crash back down again. So this sort of thing highlights, what was going on Friday night, which is a bit crazy. But I mean, render got hit hard, really, really hard, right? It was almost 100% retrace, I think. Yeah, so render got hit really, really hard, which is curious, but and this is again in a bit of a perilous position. I'm invested in this for sure as well. So it is an interesting time at the moment. Let's have a look at my things. We looked at Sol, we looked at Ethereum. Equities opening today, 6 p.m. ET time. Okay, so splash of cold water. ADA was hit as well. Let's have a quick look at ADA. The problem is, it's very difficult to see Bitcoin making a strong recovery at the moment because this is quite a significant shock, and the government's still shut down in the United States, which just isn't helping things. And there's more things happening, points of concern. So it's definitely going to be a chill out and wait and see what's happening, and be disciplined with that. ADA had a reset all the way back to pre-election in the end of 2024, but we're here now, we're okay, and this is the thing, we've recovered. So here's the floor for ADA. We're above the floor for ADA right now. You have to presume that right now there's a lot of uncertainty and fear. This is where we're going to land, right? You have to presume that, right? And think that this is the next best entry to come in. If you're waiting for then we just wait to see a W pattern or something, right? So trade it that way. So look for buying opportunities, but don't just US bank holiday tomorrow as well. Yeah, okay, that's unhelpful. Yeah, and just look at everything with a pinch of salt. Remind yourself if you got liquidated or you had some bad trades, right? Shake it off. Take a couple of days, right? Look at what went wrong. Look at if there's anything you could have done to mitigate it. And the reality is, the answer is probably you couldn't. Right? That's probably the answer, right? But what can you do to minimize the risk of black swan events? Of course, make sure you've got appropriate stop losses, but ultimately the best way to benefit from these moves is to look forward to it. Look forward to the next black swan event. I am looking forward to the next black swan event because I have a position on this token so low down, but if the market crashes, it's going to get filled, it's going to get bounced, and I'm going to make 50% in just a few minutes, right? That's how you need to approach it. I need to use Bitcoin and the crypto market's inherent volatility to my advantage, right? I don't want my money taken from these players, right, or these exchanges. I want to be the one taking the money. So I might be in a trade, there might be a black swan event, I might get stopped out, I might even get liquidated, but I have this play ready and waiting to scoop it up. My mentor said, you need to get yourself in a position where you have a black swan bag, you have a black swan pot, essentially, right? So when you got these market crashes, instead of being like I am on the thumbnail of this live stream, you're like, right, good, right? Because that's how I felt on Friday. I was exhilarated. I was concerned for my fellow traders, but I made money. And that's the way you need to walk away from these events, right? Can you do it every time? No, but you need to think that way, right? Because all these people who are manipulating the market or the receiving end of some of the conspiracy theories about like what's causing this, is, they're thinking like this. They're thinking about exploiting opportunities, right? And you have to do the same. And you have to look at market structure with skepticism, right? Because ultimately, you could argue that this isn't about this crash isn't about the tariff news. The losses which have been incurred isn't about any of that. It's about people getting caught up on the wrong end of emotions, and that's ultimately it, right? So in crypto, you've got to be grumpy. You've got to be, look at things very uniquely, and don't let yourself enter positions because everyone's like saying you must buy. Look at basic market cycle dynamics. Look at basic trend dynamics. See where you are on the bell curve. Have you got that lower low? Have you got that lower high like we had from Bitcoin? Yes. So therefore, I'm not buying now, right? Because we looked at Bitcoin, and I've taken it off the chart now. But if I just find the right chart, right, start the timer. How long does it take me to find it? How long does it take me to find it? Where is it? Who's counting? So yeah, let's have a look. Let's look at the 1 hour chart. Higher low, sorry, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. These were signals we had on Thursday, on Wednesday, right? Okay. And we lose this, we start losing levels. And of course, we get to this point and it's Friday, and then we arrive at a key level, 118K, right? And that's where people are thinking, right, this is going to be a bounce point. I'm looking to enter my positions, and then we get negative news, right? And then it pushes it even further. So the signals were there. The writing was on the wall. Let's have a look. Quick comment. In your opinion, Paul, what's a really good play at the moment? Obviously, nothing is guaranteed. Well, I mean, we've looked at a couple. We've looked at the Sol. Again, how long does it take me to find this chart? Sorry, ADA, excuse me, ADA, right? ADA is providing an opportunity for us now, right? Sol was as well, I think, if I remember correctly. I can't find it. So essentially what you want to be looking at, right? You want to be looking at, so has this token been completely trashed for the next couple of months, right? So if something like has entered negative price discovery, it's so far down, buyers aren't going to enter. But if the market cycle has now been completed for some other assets like ADA, so here's the markup, distribution marked down, and they're just ready for buyers to re-enter at key support levels, then this is your play. But you can't just jump in. We need to see, really need the government shutdown to end in the United States, but we just need to see some more price structure. And when you start seeing Bitcoin recover, then you can look at these support levels and see how they're holding. But this is good because ADA, we're at 0.63 right now, and support is around 0.5. So even if Bitcoin dips a bit more now, and it could, the crash could continue, but again, that's just fear talking, right? So we don't want to get, you don't want to get tied up, but wait and see if we wait for confirmation, right? Then so ADA is a good opportunity. So these are the sort of things you want to look at, right? And we'll be posting some of these setups, of course, on Thursday. So make sure you subscribe. But that's essentially the mentality, right? You're not looking at wicks like this and thinking, I want to get in there. No, you want to look at something which is approaching support, approaching another opportunity, right? Not ones which are, I mean, look, we're not entering ZEC either because that's just too high up, right? But let's just, so wormhole. Okay, now wormhole is pretty much invalidated for now because we're stuck behind these moving averages. We've lost all the bullish narrative. We are at support, but it's just not the sort of token which you take risks at. So this is probably reset. And likewise with XRP, not particularly good position below these moving averages. So it's got a bit of work to do. But ADA doesn't have much work to do. It just needs to come back down to support. And then there's your play. And this is the sort of setup you want to look for. Look for a double bottom or something on the RSI. Look for confluence. Make sure Bitcoin is recovering a little bit. So people start entering the market. Check Bitcoin dominance. Check Bitcoin. Here we go. Start the timer. Check Bitcoin dominance. We want to see, of course, what do we want to see? We're in an uptrend. We want to be in a downtrend, right? Start putting some key levels on. I'm sorry for these slightly messy charts. It is a Sunday. Give me a break. So let me just see if I can get this on. No, trading view won't let me, so let's shut down that chart. Let's find another one. Keep the timer going. Where is Bitcoin dominance? Here we go. Right, so what do we want to see? Right? What do you want to see from the market before you're willing to enter? Here we go. Horizontal line. Okay, so here's a line in the sand. Bitcoin dominance is currently retesting it. Right? If we get a bounce from here, you know you shouldn't be entering altcoin longs, right? That's your sign because this is reflective of market sentiment. So if Bitcoin dominance starts heading down, that shows you that people are entering their positions. So this is what you could say. Okay, this is where the bullish narrative for Bitcoin dominance ended. So for the bullish narrative for Bitcoin dominance to continue, I need Bitcoin dominance to be down here, and then a lower high and a lower low, followed by a retest of this line at around what is essentially 60% on Bitcoin dominance. That's what you want to see. And then, of course, you can start entering your positions. Now, you could start entering your positions up here if you're a bit more bullish or a bit more risky, but this is what you need to see. It is a waiting game. And this is why it's all about charting, the unsexy, the unrelenting work of charting. It's no chart, no trade, because the chart will allow you to see the TA, and the TA will allow you to offset your FOMO, right? It's as simple as that. And just remind yourself, right? And look at Bitcoin dominance, right? This is the bell curve, right? Where do we want to be, right? Where do we want to be? We're not entering assets here, right? This is, it shouldn't be doing on Bitcoin dominance because that's just silly, but let's use ADA as an example. Where's my annoying brush tool? Right, here's the market cycle curve, right? If you see this and you see that you're likely in distribution, you need to wait till you're in markdown, right? That's ultimately what you need to do. So this is what can offset your emotions at this time. And if you've had a loss, if you've taken a hit, this is my advice. Step away for a week. The market isn't going to give you what you want in a week. You're not going to be able to make up your money in a week. You're just going to make more mistakes. So take a step back. Look at the charts fresh in a few days' time, in a week's time, when the market's settled. Ask yourself what you want to see, what you're just chilling out, what you need to do to recover, and you'll be able to come up with a plan, right? But the other thing is, now is the time also to start thinking about your approach to the market and how you can improve it to make sure that, as we've said, a negative event is something you can capitalize on, right? These V-shaped bounces, which we've seen, these huge V-shaped bounces, how do we capitalize on this, right? How do we make, oh my God, I hate that tool. How do we capitalize on this? Because look, this was 132% move in one candle, right? Which would have been just minutes, right? And here's support for ADA. So what you're doing, right? Let's put the order block on for a second, right? Where's the order block? Right, look, here's the order block. So if you want a hedging strategy for Black Swan events, right? To make up for any losses you make when that happens, just find an asset, right, which has a likely, a significant retracement to support, and just put some buy orders there, right? Because all those people had their buy orders filled, right? And they made like 100% in just seconds, right? In minutes, right? And there is no harm in you having a limit order this far down on a particular asset, right? Because all it guarantees is if there's a crash, you're going to make money, right? And we're not saying here, we're talking like extreme volatility. And this is how you need to approach crypto. And this is how my mentor made his money, right? These V-shaped bounces, right? And we'll talk more about this, but how do you trade these, right? You can start to scale in. You can also come in here, and start to scale out and make your money. There's loads of different strategies, right? But ultimately, don't be a slave to the market, right? Let the market be a slave to you. That's the key thing, right? And I just want to make clear, I could have walked away from Friday in bad shape. I could have, right? Maybe there's a bit of luck, right? Maybe, but at the end of the day, you want to be able to have the opportunity to have luck, right? And to benefit from some of these moves and these crashes, and that's what you need to be doing. But I think we've probably, any other questions before I go? I think we've pretty much covered things, some really interesting viewpoints. All very legitimate. Any other questions before I go? Anything else you want me to have a look at? If not, I'm going to kick off the end music, if I can find it, as we just run into the end. So I'm on Tuesday, where we'll see back to the look on Tuesday what the market's like, and that will give me a chance to reevaluate some setups for you all, and we'll have some fresh ones for you with top altcoin picks on Thursday. I hope you all made it through this Black Swan event relatively in one piece. If not, I'm at your disposal in the ArcisFX private group. So if you are not there, please join. It's a great community where we can support you and help you and guide you to the best we can through situations like this, and of course more bullish situations no doubt to come. And I'll see you then. Thanks so much for joining me on a Sunday. It's been a great pleasure. Sorry if it's not great events, but keep your eye on the news, and I'll be back in a couple of days' time. Take care for now. Thanks everybody.